Today we're finally getting some info about what's been happening behind the scenes with Cities Skylines 2. Reading through it, some of the details are exciting, some of it feels a bit like old news, some of it's a bit puzzling, and honestly some of it's a bit frustrating, but more on that in a bit. I'm going to go through all of it in this video, but before I break anything down, I just want to say how glad I am that we finally have some communication about the future of the game. Clear communication and a roadmap of what's coming next are really vital for players who want to see the game succeed and want to make sure that it's not being abandoned. Since the Bridges and Harbors update was delayed back in June, information and updates have been scarce, and the game has only had 2 patches and a single hotfix this year, which is a fraction of what we saw last year. I know that many of us, myself included, are still struggling with major game-breaking bugs that make building a real challenge. So at this point, any information is welcome. So in this video, I'll walk through the diary and share my thoughts. I've read through it several times, let it marinate for a few days, and come away with some interesting conclusions. So without any further ado, let's just jump right in. I'm going to go through this dev diary a little bit different than the other dev diaries that we looked at. I'm just going to read through some of this and give you my thoughts on the fly as I'm thinking about them. So this dev diary is called the Bridges, Bikes, and Bug Fixes dev diary, and it's actually coming direct from Colossal Order. They say right off the bat, the purpose of this dev diary is to explain what's happening at Colossal Order. They're going to share an update about the Bridges and Ports DLC, talk about what's been happening with bicycles, and talk about the bug fixes that the team is currently tackling. Just keep in mind, this is not tied to a specific patch or release, so we shouldn't expect anything to come along with this. It's just kind of a progress update, status update, talk about what's going on, which honestly I think is valuable. Anyway, they say when one bridge closes, another one opens. With the last dev diary, they shared a sneak peek at Bridges and Ports. So they say that it's only fitting that they start with an update on the expansion. Now, in that dev diary, they were showing some white box images of assets that they're going to be adding into the game with this new time that they have. So those are now complete. They all have props and internal pathing. The last bridge has been completed and it's ready to place in your cities. With the expansion in a good place, it's time for the team at Paradox to do their magic. And they don't have a release date, but they're saying that the DLC is done. Editor Phil here, and I'm going to cut myself off from the past because I started to rant a little bit. It sounds like the DLC is done. It sounds like the patch is done. And rather than giving us a window for when we might expect to see things released or providing us more information about what's in that patch, we're getting information in this dev diary about the patch that would come after this one and features that would come later on down the line. Now that's all good info, but right now I think what's most interesting, at least to me, is what we're going to see in short order, and unfortunately that's just not covered in this at all. Now they do say that they are going to release 2 more dev diaries, but a dev diary to announce the release of 2 dev diaries is kind of weird. So that's a little bit of why I'm cutting myself off, and we can get back to the past. We get this image right here, which says that some of you have already spotted the barrier props added in the Keys and Piers updates. Let's have a peek at them. That's cool. That's kind of an acknowledgement that some of these leaked out and made their way into Paradox mods when the Keys and Piers update was released. So it's cool that they're showing these. I do wish though that they were showing us more than just the prop that you could have seen if you downloaded a mod. We do have a little sneak peek at a drawbridge and some sort of a boat right here. We don't have any release dates promised. We think that it's going to be soon that we'll have information, and we've got this one picture. So I personally find that to be a bit disappointing. This next bit is a little bit more exciting though. They say, saddle up as we've wrapped up Bridges and Ports. So again, they're saying that they've finished the DLC. I don't know why they keep telling us that they're done with it, but we're not getting it. They're saying that the team is working on their next project, adding the long-awaited bicycles to the game. They're saying that this is going to be a free feature update available to anyone who owns the base game, as they always intended for it to be a core feature of the game. This is interesting. I think that this is the first time that they've said that this was supposed to be a core feature of the game, and I kind of wish that they would have just said this 2 years ago, because I think it would have made people feel a lot better, and a lot of the memes about bikes would have died at that point. So they're saying that during development, Citizen Animations suffered delays, which meant that bicycles didn't make it into the release. I find this to be really curious because there are a number of things that made it into the release that don't have animations. Things like, I don't know, I thought that the police were going to get out of their cars and arrest criminals. I thought that maybe firefighters were going to get out of their fire engines and put out a fire. Lots of animations are missing. And this actually, for me, is a little bit more alarming because it makes me think animations seem to be a problem at this point, to the point that animations are the reason why 2 years into the release of Cities Skylines 2, we don't have cyclists in the game. So they've really been struggling with animations. It'll be interesting to see if they can pull a rabbit out of the hat and get this into the game quickly. But this makes me want to kind of temper my expectations, because if they've been struggling with animations for 2 years, I don't know why they would suddenly figure it out right now. They're saying that they've been itching to bring these into the game. They're finally excited that they get to work on it. And they just want to let you know that anything that they tell you today could change, because nothing has been finalized just yet. Then they go into a little overview about how bikes work. And honestly, it's just like every other mode of transportation. There's going to be a comfort level that determines whether or not people want to take that mode of transportation. Now, what is more interesting is that they say that riding a bicycle in a vehicle lane isn't ideal. So that means that cyclists can take up a full vehicle lane if they want. That should generate traffic, which they're saying is a bad thing. As a planner, I think it's fine that a cyclist takes up the whole lane, but they're saying that that's not ideal, and you can change that by upgrading a road and adding bicycle lanes with the road upgrade tool. Editor Phil cutting in, and I just wanted to make a quick point. As I watched through this, it's a really regressive way of looking at bicycles, the way that it appears to be described in here. And I just want to make very clear that bikes are a form of transportation, and their presence on the road shouldn't be seen as a negative thing. And I hope that the game doesn't treat it like that, because just in the real world, that's something that I've had to combat time after time after time. The bicyclists, they can take the whole lane. That's not a bad thing if they slow down traffic. It's actually a good thing for pedestrians, for the cyclists, and sometimes even for the cars. So it's not that big of a deal. And I'm hoping that that's not the way that the game's actually handling it. Anyway, back to it. Now, this is really interesting to me. Obviously, this is kind of how I assumed that this mechanic would work, that we would always be able to add bike lanes with the replace tool or the road upgrade tool. It does make me wonder if we're going to be able to add bike lanes and transit lanes, bike lanes and parking, bike lanes and trees. Generally, you get one thing and not the other, and that's not always the way it is in the real world. But we're going to have to see what happens. Adding bike lanes will improve the comfort of cycling, and it'll impact the pathfinding. So presumably, if you add on-street bike facilities, the comfort level will improve, and as a result, more cyclists will take that facility. That's great. That's actually the way it works in the real world. And then I've actually put together bike level of comfort maps where we take a look at local streets. We say because of the low speeds and the low traffic volumes, that's a comfortable facility for most people of most ages and abilities. And then as you get to a higher speed road, if you don't have a bicycle facility, it's much less comfortable. And as a result, fewer people are willing to take that. And to improve the comfort, you add bike lanes, or you add buffered bike lanes, so you have a bit of separation from the cars. Or you completely separate the bike facilities from the vehicles to improve the comfort even more. And it sounds like that's the logic that they're baking into the game. And to me, that's wonderful. That's how it should be. They show a couple of pictures, and these are work in progress images, and a couple of things jump out to me. First of all, that green is horrendous. And I'm glad that they acknowledge that it is a very bright green implementation. That to me means it's likely going to change. I hope that it does, and I hope that they give you some options. There are many places that rather than having green, go with a different color like a maroon or a red. So I think that having bike lanes with options would be really nice. I don't know if they're going in that direction, but I certainly hope that they do. Now, there are some interesting things that I'm seeing in this picture beyond just the color. We're seeing that it looks like there's some sort of a bike parking facility, and it seems like it's a big one, and those sorts of places do exist. It's good to see that they are thinking about that, and we're seeing some of the implementations of that in these pictures. And they actually confirm that there are no pocket bikes in the game. That means that people will need to take their bikes and put them in a bike rack, which you've already seen on a number of assets in the game. Apparently, all of those are going to be activated, and people will be able to park their bikes in those locations. This makes me a little bit nervous because ultimately, people don't always need to park their bike at a bike rack. Many places that I've worked have had internal bike parking, or people would take their bike into their office and just put it next to their desk. Further, it appears there are many assets in the game that don't actually have any bike racks. And I'm really curious to know what's going to happen with those, because some of these buildings are buildings where you'd expect there to be bike parking built into it. So yes, bike parking is important. I don't want to see a bunch of cyclists circling around the city looking for parking like it's a car. That's not the way it works. And I do wonder, with comfort being a thing, if you don't comfortably have a place to park your bike, does that just mean that you are less likely to be a cyclist? That probably should be how it works. I'll be really interested in knowing how they end up coding this into the game. Now, going back to these images, a couple of things jump out to me. So obviously I mentioned that we have bike parking right here, bike parking right here, bike parking right here. We've got a multi-use path right here. That is all great stuff to see. But I'm noticing that we have a whole bunch of what appears to be motorcyclists on bicycles. That bike prop has actually been in the game a long time. That's not a new thing. That's been in there, I think, since day one. Someone found it. But we're not seeing specific cyclist animations. And it seems to me like all the cyclists that we're seeing in these images are kind of in the same pose, which means that they haven't figured out the animation issue. They're just showing us that the underlying mechanic is working, which means that it's not really in a different spot than it was before, because it seems like they've been able to figure out how to have different modes of transportation on the same street, with different choices being made by different people depending on where they're going and the comfort level. They're also showing us new buildings, but they've been able to make new buildings for quite some time. And they're showing us bike parking, but bike parking has existed for quite some time. So again, this just kind of makes me temper my expectations, because if what we're seeing is just an image without any animations, with an asset that's already in the game, with another asset that's already in the game put on it, and what appears to be some kind of rough images of what bike lanes could look like, these are really early days. And I really hope that they can figure these out sooner rather than later. But I just want to temper everyone's expectations, because I look at this and I think, I don't know that they're as far along as we might hope that they are. We'll see. I would love to be wrong. Next, they say something old, something new. While their programmers are working on bicycles, the artists are creating something new, or rather something old in terms of the style. They're working on a series of Old Town inspired assets that are for low density residential and medium density mixed use zones. They're not saying that these are free or paid, so we have no idea. So before you get excited and think I get a free update, just know that it doesn't say. So these are the images that they're showing us, and they seem like nice enough assets. In my hometown, the building on the right, that is very similar to a building that I used to pass almost every single day on my way to work at the grocery store. It's kind of a traditional German architecture style, and it kind of fits, I would imagine this fits in both a European build and a North American build. Seems like there's a decent variety in terms of the heights. It seems like there's a good mix there as well. And it seems like in terms of the styling, most of these are going to be brighter with red colored roofs. There are a couple that have different colors though. And there are some different sizes for the assets. Then they say that they have a few new service buildings in the works as well, including a smaller cemetery. Thank goodness. The cemetery is massive and you don't always want to place a crematorium. So happy to see this. They also have a new campfire site with an outdoor sauna, of course. Some new depots and stations for public transit, which is great, including a new tram station, which is actually the first tram station that we'll have in the game. We've had tram stops, but no tram stations, so good to see that one. You know, for me, we've already got a lot of public transit. It's good to see them adding more of these, but I'm hoping that they add other service buildings as well. Now, they're also saying that a new drop-down menu is being added so that you can select multiple vehicles on a transit line. So if you wanted to have the Colossal Order bus along with a regular bus, you could do that on a transit line. The place where I could see this being the most beneficial is sometimes on a transit line, you'll have a mixture of just diesel buses and electric buses, depending on the availability in the system. That's not something that you can do right now, and it could look like you're out of buses when you're really just out of electric buses or out of, just diesel buses. So being able to mix and match is going to be really good. I'm going to be really curious to see the implementation of this, because you might want to have a certain mix in this particular route, and it doesn't appear that that is currently an option. I'm hoping that they add that. And then finally, they talk about bug fixes. And this is a little bit perplexing to me. So they say that thanks to their bug reports, they've got a long list of small issues that have already been fixed that are waiting for the next patch. And then they have a number of others that they're still working on. And for this dev diary, they want to focus on 2 issues: tourism and mail. The 2 bugs that they are highlighting are not bugs that are going to be fixed in the next patch. Instead, they're bugs that they are working on for the patch after that. There is no information in this document about the patch that will be coming with bridges and ports. Now, tourists, the problem with this apparently is that tourists weren't consuming the correct amount of lodging, and they weren't paying the correct amount either. So they're currently testing a fix for this and other balancing changes to tourism, so that tourists can afford to stay at hotels and spend more time and money in your city. This is a crazy bug. It was really tanking my build, tanked all commercial demand. Deleting the hotels brought commercial demand back because all commercial demand is tied together, including tourist demand for hotels. I didn't realize that lodging was being treated as an intangible good, which means that it's basically being treated as part of the industrial supply chain. It feels to me like a really convoluted way of dealing with tourism. I'm surprised that tourists aren't just coming to your city if your city is attractive. That's completely separate from the supply chain. That's popping parks, adding tourist amenities and things like that. That makes your city more attractive. And we can actually take a look at city attractiveness right now. So it would seem that if your city is attractive, tourists should want to come. And if there's a lot of tourists that want to come, that should increase your commercial demand. It seems strange that lodging is a good that they come to your city to consume. It seems like a very convoluted way of dealing with this, and it makes balancing it hard. And it says that this won't make the next patch. So the new patch that's coming with bridges and ports won't have this fixed, which means that the next version of the game will be bugged. That's a little frustrating, if I'm being completely honest with you. And the second bug that they want to address is mail service. And they say that they tried to fix it back with patch 1.0.15F1. That one actually came out in December 2023, where the post-sorting facility would appear to do nothing or very little when a cargo facility was placed in the city. They're saying that they're now working on fixes to get it working. So I really hope that they are able to figure this one out quickly and, give either a hot fix or another patch, because this is going to impact that new DLC. They're basically saying that, maybe not as explicitly as I'm saying it, but it's all right there. This is a major bug that impacts the ports, and it's not fixed yet. And that right there is everything. So I kind of want to talk about what they did touch on and what they didn't. So they confirmed that bridges and ports is now complete. That confirms that the next patch is also complete. They didn't give us a release date for either of those, which I find to be a bit disappointing. They confirmed that bicycles are their next priority and that they're actively working on them. They talked about new assets that they are working to work into the game. They didn't talk about whether those were free or not, but they did say that bikes are free. They talked about a couple of bugs that are major issues that have been problems basically since the game was released. They said that they're working on them, but that they aren't going to be in the next patch, but hopefully in the one after that. Don't know when that patch is going to be either. Hopefully this year. I would assume that we get one maybe in December before they take their winter holiday. Now, some of the things that they didn't talk about. They didn't talk about console at all. And that's a comment that I see 100 times a day on my videos. Second, they didn't say anything about official asset support. And I'm really confused as to why they didn't. That to me seems like a pretty big miss. It feels like something that's on the front of everyone's mind. And it's a bit surprising to me that they appear to be shifting gears to bikes and not asset support. They also gave 0 deadlines for any of that stuff. So no deadlines for bikes, no deadlines for asset support, no deadlines for console. So who knows when that stuff comes. And finally, they didn't acknowledge any of the major bugs that people are currently facing that have been kind of the front of mind for a lot of people. Like not being able to load into the game because of corrupted playsets or corrupted saves, not being able to have commercial demand or office demand due to the commercial and office bugs that are plaguing the game that are currently fixed with mods. So I was really hoping that we would see more acknowledgement of those, and I hope that we get more acknowledgement of those in the near future, and maybe a more comprehensive list of all the fixes that we should expect to see in the next patch. And I hope that we see a release date for that patch in the near future. If they're done, I'm not fully sure why they wouldn't just release it. But with that, I think that we're going to leave it here. I think that for the next dev diaries, knowing that we're gonna have a few more of these, I'll probably go through it in a very similar way, a little bit more laid back, going through the PDF with my thoughts along the way. Let me know what you think about this format. I hope that you like it. It's a little bit easier for me to put together, and I think it's a little bit more organic and it feels just a bit better for me anyway. And I hope that it feels better for you as well. But with that, we're gonna leave it here. And I hope that you've enjoyed this one. If you did, please hit the like button. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so, especially if you wanna see updates like this. And if you wanna see my Cities Skylines content, which I'm hoping will come in the near future. Again, the reason I've cut back on it is I've been suffering with major bugs and issues in basically every single build. I know that not all of you are experiencing those or not experiencing them in the same way. I get that. Do know that for people who are experiencing them, it's a very real problem. It's very frustrating. As a community, we need to come together and kind of embrace that people have different experiences with this. They're real and they stink and it's depressing, especially when you just want to play the game. Anyway, I'm going to leave it here. I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.